Okay, I think we'll start to not keep you all longer waiting. Thank you very, very much for joining for the launch of the research on diaspora engagement in Afghanistan in the immediate aftermath of the Taliban takeover, 15th of August this year. We're very pleased to have you all here today. A few technical things before we start with the content. If you need interpretation, both Pashto and Dari are available. So please do select the right channels if you need on the bottom of the Zoom. We'll have them throughout the event, so you can follow in different languages as well. If you have any issues with interpretation, please do write in the chat, and our technical support team in the background will help you try and figure it out. We have 90 minutes and a lot of exciting things happening. So really looking forward. Thank you all for joining. You are all muted and your videos off. You will see the panelists and the presenters online, but as this is a webinar, your video is off. You can, and we very much would like to see your questions in the question and answer section, also on the bottom of the Zoom or in the chat. So please do participate actively. Do bring up and forward any question you have, any comments you want to make to the panelists or to the research findings we are going to present, and do make it a very interactive session as much as we can do this online. So very much appreciating your ideas, your comments, and everything. The event will be recorded and will be available afterwards in the YouTube channel of DEMAC, as well as on Facebook. And the full report of the Afghanistan research will be shared with you also after the event and already is on our homepage. A quick overview of what we are going to have today, what we're going to discuss very shortly, the agenda. We'll start with a few words on DRC's Diaspora program and DEMAC, who we are and why we work with diasporas. And then jump straight into the findings and recommendations of the research and have a short question and answer session where, as mentioned, we would really like also to hear from you and to see what interests you and what have you thought of what you've read so far. And then we have a panel discussion with members of the Afghan Civil Society and diaspora organizations on what way forward, where to go from here, and what are the options and opportunities potentially also for Afghan diaspora engagement in Afghanistan. Without further ado, I would like to hand over to Mingo Haiduktechi, who's the head of unit of the Civil Society Engagement Unit at DRC, to say a few words on the Diaspora program and why we work with diasporas. Mingo, over to you.
Thank you, Alexandra. I'm not sure I'm visible. I cannot see myself online anyway. But I have the pleasure to welcome all of you officially to today's event as the head of DRC's Global Civil Society Engagement Unit. And it's my pleasure to do so. A few words on our Civil Society Engagement Unit and the fact that it also houses our Global Diaspora Engagement Program. DRC has been working with diaspora engagement for the past 10 years, actually. And if we want to look just very quickly at the way we define diasporas, being migrants and refugees that are maintaining active ties with their former ancestral homeland, it also means to an organization like DRC that they are an integral part of both the civil society in their countries of origin, as well as in their country of residence. So for an organization like DRC working across the displacement cycles and trends, it's quite important to look at civil society in a broader lens across the route that displacement takes people into. We have been supporting diaspora actors for the past decade out of a recognition of the role diasporas play and the impact they have on their countries of origin as well as in the country of residence, and the support that they render themselves to people that are affected by conflict and displacement. And from our end, seeing the value of supporting that engagement and doing whatever we can to oops, sorry, my phone crashed. doing whatever we can do to support diaspora to have the strongest impact and the most constructive impact possible. So working with diaspora engagement out of a humanitarian organization like DRC that itself is working in 30+ emergencies globally speaking, the role of diasporas as first responders in times of crisis has been of a kind of obvious core interest, which has then led us to also develop this particular initiative, the DEMAC initiative, which Alexandra will talk a lot more about, but looking at diasporas as first responders in the global crises contexts. So ultimately, this is what has led to DEMAC, but the link to the diaspora program is still quite strong, which is also maybe something to mention, that the research that is the talk of today is actually a collaboration between the DEMAC initiative, which works under its own remit and its own mandate to enable the best possible support to diaspora emergency responders. But the collaboration was with another one of our diaspora engagement initiatives, looking at Afghan diaspora and the funding mechanism to support diaspora engagement, especially in the Danish context. So just to kind of reflect on the fact that there's a lot of synergies between our overall engagement with diaspora, all speaking to the strong impact and value diaspora engagement has in countries affected by conflict and displacement, and our attempt to support that as best as we can. Of the research and to follow the discussions going ahead. I think I will hand it over to Alexandra with this, and I apologize for the technical issues of my phone falling down all the time, but I think it worked still. So welcome again to today. Yeah, looking forward to have you there, and thank you everyone for joining us. Alexandra, I'll hand it back to you.
Thanks a lot. So a few words about DEMAC. As Mingo already said, it's a global initiative that is hosted by the Danish Refugee Council, and is a global initiative, the Diaspora Emergency Action and Coordination Initiative. We are currently funded by USAID, and what we aim to do is to facilitate a global network of diaspora organizations through different objectives. So really looking at diaspora as global actors, each in their own contexts and setups, but yet looking at them all together as well. And what we really do they focus on? Who are diaspora humanitarians, and how do they coordinate and cooperate with different institutional humanitarian actors? So really creating this knowledge body, and with this we try to increase awareness on diaspora humanitarian interventions, and make also the institutional humanitarian system aware that there is more, that there is non-traditional actors, that there is civil society actors, that there is diasporas as actors, and that we want to create a more inclusive coordination system where each actor can contribute with its own unique value. And ultimately, this really aims at improving coordination, communication, and coherence of the humanitarian responses. And ultimately, why we all do this is to really serve the people in need we want to serve. And we really try to bring diaspora from around the globe together, also to see how can they coordinate, can learn from each other, where can systems enhance and create synergies with each other. Why do we do real-time reviews? Maybe that's one of the very interesting points as well to think of, is really real-time reviews. We've also done a lot of case study, longer term assessments, but real-time reviews really allow us to see in emergencies, in crisis, where does diaspora act? How do they react to certain events? What trends can we see across the crisis? And what can that also mean for engagement in different humanitarian crises? So very excited to have Afghanistan as one of the real-time reviews we've done this year, and to learn a bit more in a moment, and to really see what has Afghan diaspora around the world done in the recent months, and how have they reacted to the events. So I don't want to delay any further the presentation of the research results and findings, and I'm very happy to have Neda Sipernush with us here today, who has been the lead researcher on the Afghanistan real-time review. So Neda, the floor is yours, and looking forward to your presentation.
Hi, and thank you, Alexandra, for the introduction. Well, I think we can already start and go to the next first slide. Thank you. So in terms of what we explored here, the main topics were ADO's actions, the changing dynamics, and their results. So ADO's action in terms of advocacy, coalition building, and direct engagement, and then changing of diaspora dynamics since the Taliban takeover, and the nature of these changes, and also changes of dynamics that have resulted in outcomes and actions. Can we go to the next slide, please? All right, so before we get to the findings, I wanted to mention a few points about this report. And the first one is that the focus of this work was,
یافته‌های مهم مشارکت دیاسپورای افغان یافته‌های مهم ما در مورد
was conducted from mid-August to end of September, and we covered 60 ADOs from Europe, North America, Afghanistan, neighboring countries, and Australia. And key informant interviews were also conducted with representatives of 10 ADOs as well as DRC Diaspora program staff. So the breakdowns are available in the report if you want to have a look. Then this report is presenting a snapshot of what was happening immediately after the takeover and in the span of 6 weeks. Some of the points mentioned here might not be exactly the same right now as things move very quickly, but there are challenges and opportunities presented here that still remain true and probably will stay unchanged unless additional interventions are made. And lastly, this report can also show some of the common challenges experienced by these type of organizations in similar setting, so it can help us anticipate what to expect in the face of other crises in future. So we can go to the findings now in the next slide. Thanks. And so starting with the Afghan diaspora organizations themselves, they were mainly active in the fields of integration, culture, advocacy, legal aid, resettlement support, and education, primarily focusing on the diaspora communities in their country of residence, but also some were active in various areas of humanitarian aid and development support in Afghanistan. We also saw that there was a stronger online presence in US and Canada. Updates of activities were almost non-existent in the neighboring countries because of the limited operational space and their political context there. Next slide, please. So all the interviewed ADOs had gone through some sort of change in their areas of focus or approach. Inactive ADOs started to mobilize their resources, and changes in focus were mostly driven by the practical and logistical challenges, such as the collapse of the banking system. Factors such as ethnicity and age range also affected organizations' approach and challenges. Hazara diaspora organizations experienced more ethnically charged questions and comments from their donors and the wider community. Also, organizations with only young core members found it difficult to connect with older generations. And next slide, please. ADO's main areas of activity can be divided into 4 main categories. Community engagement, advocacy and awareness raising, emergency fundraising, and direct assistance. And can we go to the next one, please? So we identified some key elements with regard to ADO's community engagement activities. These activities are usually quite dependent on core members' network, and the bulk of this engagement work is through friends and family. But also, this is not the case for all the ADOs. Some took a more strategic approach with having community engagement activities as a separate work stream as opposed to ad hoc and based on immediate needs. We also saw ADOs taking some innovative approaches, such as engaging with social media influencers to expand their reach. As for examples in the next slide, we can see Y.A.A.R Foundation collaborated with Windmill Theatre in Australia with a fundraising performance which raised over 12,000 Australian dollars. Then we have Mahbouba's Promise. They conducted live stream chats and panel discussions, which was supported by an Australian influencer, activist, and a model. She hosted some of these events or was among the people who participated in some of these sessions. Then we have Afghan Women's Support Forum in the UK. They posted about organizing a live stream concert in support of Afghanistan with classical music of South Asia through 2 of their locally based musicians. Next, please. So advocacy and awareness raising, this is the area that most of the captured ADO activities fell under, with 48% of all of our records. ADOs organized protests and published official statements, open letters, engaged with the media and news networks. They also conducted information sessions and panel discussions. If we go to the next slide, we can see some of the examples. So one of the key advocacy and awareness raising activities early on was the August 28th protests, which were held in more than 40 cities and across 17 countries. Another one was the Hazara committee in UK. They were the primary signatory of a letter to Home Office Minister on community sponsorship for refugees resettlement. And they also advocated for the Hazaras to be recognized as a vulnerable group. Also, another example was a petition shared by the KEIHAN Foundation, which collected more than 32,000 signatures. As a result, the request for an urgent policy for the evacuation of Afghans who had worked with the Dutch military and Dutch NGOs was handed over to the members of the parliament, and subsequently it was affirmed by the cabinet to be carried out in full. Next slide, please. So for the fundraising activities, in total, 26 fundraising campaigns were captured, including 4 on the GoFundMe platform, 14, sorry, on the GoFundMe platform. These campaigns had target amounts ranging from a few thousands to $1 million or pounds. And they had different types of promotional strategy, from like simple one-time text-based to more comprehensive ones with follow-up reports. Next, please. So these follow-up reports were on the amounts raised and sometimes also on the provided services that as the result of their campaigns. We have to keep in mind that at that point in time, many ADOs considered information sharing regarding services delivered may put the volunteers or the beneficiaries at risk. So these types of reports were generally quite limited. Support was provided both in Afghanistan and in the host countries of ADOs. Considering the large number of internally displaced individuals who had come to Kabul, several ADOs focused their activities in this area, but also reached out to families in Ghazni, Mazar Sharif, Maidan Vardak, Nangarhar, and Faryab, among other locations. They also supported the resettlement of newly relocated Afghans in their countries of residence with accommodation facilities, non-food items, food, legal aid, also health and psychological support. For example, we can see in the next slide. So you can see, I think this one is on the right, Children Without Borders fundraising campaign resulted in cash and relief package distribution to at least more than 300 families in Kabul, Ghazni, Mazar Sharif, and Faryab provinces, with each package worth between 150 and 300 Canadian dollars. This picture we see here belongs to one of their distributions, which took place in collaboration with the Vatan Project, which is another ADO in Canada, and Dress Your Face, an Instagram influencer account belonging to Tamana Roshan, an influencer, beauty influencer. Then the other picture, you can see the Afghan Community and Welfare Center in the UK. They're being supported by the Beacon Community Church for collection of donations and deliveries to newly relocated Afghans in Birmingham and London. So for instance, this ADO, they were very involved with their community. So each week they would post about their activities and different communities coming to support them with the donations. So if we go to the next slide, please. So the findings also included some additional elements, such as accountability, coalitions, and coordination, and the challenges faced by the ADOs. Next, please. ADOs used various measures to ensure accountability. Some ADOs organized Q&A sessions before and after conducting their activities to explain the process and answer any questions their donors might have. They also published updates, sometimes accompanied by location information, images and videos of their activities. And also interviewees mentioned being in regular contact with the donors from their community through phone calls and WhatsApp. Some ADOs reported instructing their volunteers to be open to feedback and to pass on the information back to the organization for further action. This is particularly true for ADOs that had direct assistance in Afghanistan, which made the volunteer the only contact person between the beneficiary and the organization. Next, please. In response to the crisis in Afghanistan, ADOs formed new coalitions and strengthened their old coalitions. Organizations who were already working in partnerships, coordination calls and meetings become more regular and frequent. ADOs had different experiences regarding coordination. Less established organizations reported difficulty locating other like-minded organizations, and even after forming new coalitions, some experience difficulty maintaining them. Forming new coalitions seem to take place through individual connections of ADO members. When an idea was shared with friends or family members, then they would put them in touch with people who shared the same ideas. And lastly, the majority of joint fundraising campaigns were organized among country-level coalitions of ADOs. We can go to the next one, please. Thank you. As for challenges, there were reports of several issues experienced by the ADOs. For instance, contextual challenges where the worsening security environment meant either a total loss of access to their contacts or the possibility of putting the lives of their volunteers at risk. Another one was the total collapse of the banking system in Afghanistan, which prevented some ADOs from transferring the necessary funds. Others, especially the ones with bases there, could use the funds already transferred before the takeover to respond. The other challenge was the lack of core funding. The interviewed ADOs mentioned their unstable funding situation to support their administrative purposes doesn't allow them to provide the necessary services, despite them having the necessary skills to do so. Although the lack of registration in host country prevented some ADOs from having proper banking and registration information, which in turn negatively affect the fundraising capabilities. A lot of these ADOs some were registered, but also we have these groups of people coming together and trying to respond, especially with the current crisis, or they had already their group, but they were inactive and wanted to quickly respond, but because of these registration issues, they were unable to respond in a way they wanted to. Other challenges included fraud and corruption in Afghanistan. As a key challenge, it was mentioned by the interviewed ADOs, and insufficient cross-ADO networks. This one is especially true for younger or less experienced ADOs. As for the recommendations, so we have supporting host country level coalitions by involving relevant donors. So by having networking events with the aim of further collaboration among ADOs at the country level, the participants can have a shared understanding of their context, operational space, and limitations. Also, this will be more cost effective for in-person meetings, which means probably easier for the ADOs to set them up themselves. Donors with specific interests in those countries can be involved as well, like the NEDA for Denmark, and they can support building diaspora coalitions through multi-year plans. We had an example of this in Germany with GIZ involved, which seemed quite successful. Next one was organizing events with clear objectives. So networking events, and particularly the ones organized by DRC, were mentioned in some of the interviews. However, it seemed that they were not perceived equally useful for everyone. Younger ADOs really appreciated these venues, but for some, especially the ones with already strong partnerships, they would have wanted to have the chance of engaging with donors to gain support for specific projects. Then we have conducting organizational self-assessment training. We know that ADOs have different levels of capacity. For ADOs to be able to form new coalitions, it is important to understand their own capacities and weaknesses so they can have mutually beneficial engagement. This was also mentioned as a challenge by some, when they do get to meet each other, they don't know what they can offer or request from others. This is usually an issue for the less experienced ADOs. And then conducting comprehensive financial training. Some ADOs are already suffering from an absence of adequate financial planning, which has prevented them from achieving their goals. When developing financial management training for diaspora organization, topics such as accountability, financial risk mitigation, and managing a potential influx of funding should be considered. Then we have developing short and targeted e-learning courses to increase their online profile. So even though a lot of material is already available online, targeted courses or packages for diaspora organizations can still be useful. For instance, content for online safety, as they conduct a lot of their coordination and reporting online, media awareness for present their organization when having interviews, digital marketing to achieve the things they want through their online campaigns, as well as ethical reporting can be created for non-technical users. And lastly, translating key DMAC documents to Farsi and Pashto. We know that a large number of Afghan diaspora organizations, and particularly DMAC and diaspora program partners, reside in Europe, and their first or second language even is not English. Translation of documents could be limited to training material and summary reports, or even ideally could contain relevant context analysis and needs assessment reports to support providing the full picture for the population of concern, such as the situation of Afghans in neighboring countries. These don't have to be produced by DRC, but could be made available along the other documents on DMAC websites. And I think that's it for this segment.
Thank you very, very much, Nida. Really appreciate, and I think I see quite a lot of questions coming in the chat and in the Q&A. So please stay with your video, because I would like to feedback some to you actually. I was informed that there are slight hiccups with the interpretation. I apologize for that. I will try to speak slow and allow the interpreters to translate things. Nida, maybe for a start, there was a question on the geographical spread, regions, countries. Is there any data? Have you seen any region or country where the Afghan diaspora is particularly strong, efficient, and supportive? Has there been differences in the regions in how they engage?
Well, the thing to keep in mind about this RTR specifically is that our focus was very much online. We did conduct interviews, informal interviews with different organizations, but we had, and this is reflected in the limitation section of the report, that we were not able to have the diverse geographic locations that we wanted. This is not representative at all. So we cannot really generalize some of these findings. One of the things I did mention, especially about their online presence, was that ADOs in North America seemed more active with their advocacy, with their awareness raising, compared especially to Europe, and then compared to the neighboring countries, which again look non-existent. So, but the fact is, because we were not able to conduct as many as we wanted for the interviews, we cannot really just based on the findings only say that the ADOs in North America are more active, because through some of the discussion we know a lot was happening in Europe which was not reflected online. But yeah, I wouldn't based on the findings here alone, I wouldn't say like this region did better than the other. Australia was really good also, but neighboring countries exception, because like the context is quite different there.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, we discussed a lot while you were conducting research of indeed the difficulties of looking into the neighboring countries, and also diasporas not potentially not wanting to be seen. So I think that's always an interesting element as well. We have one question here from Martin Russell on the intergenerational complexities in the diaspora, whether you found that the younger generation or the next generation were developing different forms of diaspora organizations, potentially tech-based community platforms and the like, or if they have a different scope feeling than the more established, the more long-term organizations that have already been before. And if so, what could be, in your opinion, and from the research you've done and from the people you spoke to, what could be the glue and the connection across these generations to bring them together?
This was actually one of the very interesting points that we saw initially when we started. It appeared as there was this disconnect between like older generation organizations and the younger generation organization, and we kind of saw a contradiction here, because the ADOs, especially the less experienced one, when they didn't have like a little bit older members among them, they found it very difficult to engage with other ADOs and also with members of their own community from other generations. But where ADOs had both young and older generation, they actually saw this huge advantage that with having these people from different generations, they actually bring in different approaches which works better and they can basically cover more ground, because different approaches actually works with different segments of the community that they want to reach out to. And these different approaches was something that was brought on as a challenge by the organizations that were mainly young. This is like because of these different approaches, it's difficult to work together. But if they can look past that, they would say that these different approaches is exactly the thing that will help them to reach out to the wider community.
Thanks. Yeah, very, very interesting. I see more questions coming in. So one very specific one was whether the report and the research also looked at more charitable programs among diaspora for Afghanistan, and if there was any measuring of the amount that was sent and collected to Afghanistan, if you have any idea of a scale of measurement. And I know that also we talked a bit about the difficulties in transferring money into Afghanistan, but maybe you could say a few words about this as well.
Yeah, so we can divide this into like the amounts raised and then the amounts that were actually moved to Afghanistan. For the second part, we really cannot say, except for some of the ADOs that reported about their cash distributions, we do have some numbers on that, but this is not by any means showing the scale of actually how much support, monetary support was moved to Afghanistan. And then going back to the amounts raised, we do see in the report that these different fundraising strategies that these ADOs had adopted prevented some of these key information that would be actually very interesting for the donors themselves to see, like what is your target, how much are you planning to raise, and did you reach that target? So we can look at just one number here, and this is only for organizations that had used these crowdfunding platforms, online crowdfunding platforms. For those we counted, and this is by the time of writing the report, these campaigns were still continuing. We had under 1 million, something, I think $900,000 was raised in total. But this is just a segment of all the fundraising campaigns out there.
Thanks. Yeah. I'm conscious of time, but we do have a few more minutes for one or two more questions. And there was something specific about the coalitions also, that quite often in diaspora work, building community network infrastructure across the diaspora is a blind spot or missing ingredient, yet critical for success. And I think this is also what we talked a little bit about before, like what DEMAC aims really to do. The question is whether you think that the infrastructure needs enhancing from the research you've done, and is there any particular service support, any specific thing that could be provided for this diaspora, for the Afghan diaspora, to enhance this community network? And I think this is an interesting question also for later for our panelists, actually. But I'd like Nida, from your research on the coalitions, mentioning that there is some new coalitions also, and saying that how sustainable are they, or what could them make sustainable in also keeping their talks with each other?
Yeah, so this affects different sections of these coalition buildings, from initially finding each other, then agreeing on something, and then to continuing working in coalitions. One of the things that was raised from a couple of ADOs we interviewed was a lack of central database which contains the information of all the ADOs that they can reach out to when they need. But in reality, that does not seem quite feasible. You can see from organizations' websites itself that they're not always even updated, right? So this, like, even if you want to find it, actively looking for certain type of organizations, we see that the information is not available online. With any kind of database to be useful, it needs to be kept online, and the only people who can keep it online is the organizations. So for instance, we had this report, DRC report, that looked at Diaspora organization in Europe. I think it was Denmark, Sweden, Germany, and UK. So we used this in the initial stages when we wanted to locate these ADOs, and it was interesting. And the report is quite recent, like 2 years ago or something. And we did see that I think it's like 400 ADOs, and around 60% of these organizations did not have any online presence. So this is like the first step, trying to find each other, and then agreeing on common issues. This seemed to be the area that was not that difficult. So usually people can find something to agree on. especially when there's issues like with the current crisis, and everyone like the things they want usually kind of emerges. But then again, it gets difficult when we get to maintaining these coalitions and going further from like working together on one specific project. This was one of the things that was also raised by some of the interviewees, and even with the involvement of donors. Like this is usually when the donors comes in, they will ask like 2 different ADOs and even like with the CSO in Afghanistan to work on this one project. And then when it's done, then everyone goes on their own way. So that's why we had in our recommendations as one of the key points that these donor involvements needs to be through multi-year plans, and it needs to have milestones, and it needs ADO's engagement themselves to really define these milestones and see what is the progress and what is the process for this engagement, meaning coalitions building and coordination as an activity itself, as opposed to having this coalition to support this one project.
Thank you very, very much, Nida, for being with us today, presenting about the research and answering some questions. I know we have some more questions coming in, and thank you very, very much for them. We unfortunately have to stop here. I'm encourage all of you also to get in touch with DEMAC directly. We'll share our details later, and to look also into the report in more detail. And if there's any other urgent question, please do get in touch with us. Very happy to engage also later around these topics. And again, thank you very much, Nida, for sharing your knowledge and being with us. And with this, I would like to hand over to my colleague Beatrice, who will facilitate the panel discussion with representatives of diaspora organizations and civil society. Bea, over to you.
Thank you, Alexandra. Hello, everybody. So yes, we have with us today 3 representatives of Afghan Civil Society Organization and Diaspora Organization. So we'll present you briefly the 3 panelists, and then after we will I will ask some questions based on the report, and we would like to hear from them. The answers on. So we have today with us Aziz Rafiee, who is the executive director of Afghan Civil Society Forum Organization. Yes, we see on the video. The organization is to facilitate the process of citizen building and state building through advocacy, capacity building, and coordination. Aziz has contributed to the Afghanistan civil society development in more than 23 years of his active work and engagement. He has worked with a wide range of civil society stakeholders, including the social, human rights, and cultural organizations, as well as NGOs and associations. He has been the founding member of more than 12 civil society organizations who are contributing to the democratic development processes of the country. I will stop here because Aziz has quite a lot of experience, but we are really, really pleased to have you with us today. I will continue presenting the other panelists. So we have also with us Kava Spartak, sorry, who is a representative of Y.A.A.R, the diaspora Afghan diaspora organization based in Germany. Kava has always strived for social solutions to the problems and challenges of his community of origin living in exile. He's a co-founder and managing director of Y.A.A.R, a leading Afghan German NGO that provides counseling, offers empowerment workshops, and does advocacy work for Afghan migrants in Germany and beyond. Beyond to be founding Y.A.A.R in Berlin, Kava worked as lecturer in London and is an elected member to the Berlin State's Advisory Board for Migration and Integration and the chairperson of the Federation of Afghan Organizations in Germany. Nice having you today, Kava. with us. And the last panelist is Zala Pamir, who is representing KEIHAN Foundation, that stands for Knowledge, Education, Integration, Assistance for Afghans in the Netherlands and Afghanistan. KEIHAN Foundation was founded in 2005 by a group of dedicated Afghan students in the Netherlands. The foundation is an independent non-profit organization without any political, religious, and ethnic preferences. The objective of KEIHAN Foundation are to provide knowledge about Afghan and Dutch language and culture, stimulate the integration of Afghans in the Netherlands, and to bring the Dutch and Afghan cultures together, assist and support Afghans, particularly the youth in Afghanistan, in different areas, humanitarian, educational, medical, and provide a connecting bridge and platform between Afghan students in the Netherlands and Afghanistan. Nice having you as well, Zala, with us today. Thank you to all of you to be with us to discuss the engagement of Diaspora and the civil society organization towards Afghanistan. So my first question will be, so if each of you can briefly say anything, what is your feeling or your impression on the research finding, anything that surprised you or that you want to highlight would be the first question. And then after it would be more about the coordination and also the next step, what will be the space for the civil society organization. But first, your impression on the findings and if anything is missing or surprising. Please, Aziz, you can start and then. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I think that comes not to the ladies first, yeah. So I think I'm the first man in this speaker in this discussion today, speaking. Is actually you're making the gender balance. First of all, congratulations for this very nice, very comprehensive research. I think it was a very good piece of work for future, and putting the step and foundation for a further discussion on the issue of diaspora Afghans and also coordination among them, as well as advocacy issues for the future work and among the diaspora community, not only actually in the Europe, but also in other countries, and particularly the neighboring countries, which was actually very badly missing in the report. So I think it was very well pointed out, and I think that's something that we should very highly focus, because the diaspora community and the neighboring countries of Afghanistan are becoming very, very vulnerable, particularly in terms of the politics and the policies taken by the neighboring countries for the diaspora community of Afghanistan. The second issue, we were all actually, the research disclosed and revealed a very important number of points, which clearly mentioned that the lack of a proper coordination among diaspora organizations around the country, around the world or all around the world, makes a huge mess about the better responsiveness to the diaspora and to the groups, to vulnerable groups inside Afghanistan, particularly when there is a huge number of displacement inside Afghanistan. There is a huge movement in Afghanistan. If you remember, as of 25th July, when the collapse of the major provinces started, or big provinces started, we had a huge number of IDPs traveling from provinces to Kabul. So that actually created a sphere and also environment of uncertainty inside Afghanistan, which caused a massive move towards outside Afghanistan, particularly the neighboring countries, and also to the Kabul airport, where the hope was there that they will get out of the country. So there was no proper measures at the beginning by the national and international organizations and response organizations to make sure that they are addressing this issue. Later on, when the fighting started in some of the provinces, we had a forced migration groups as well, which never actually paid attention. And also in this report was not very well focused on those, particularly in the areas of Panjshir, areas of Daikundi and Bamiyan, where the people were forced to migrate from those areas when they were displaced from those places, including Balkh as well. I mean, that is something that we should also point out in the next round of such a research, particularly when we go to the root causes of the conflict in Afghanistan, also to help in the future to prevent the conflict in Afghanistan. An overall status was a status of uncertainty. It showed actually for us in this research that coordination among the diaspora organization outside Afghanistan was not also very well. So they were not very well prepared to make sure that they are addressing the problem in Afghanistan, and they're actually changing the environment for the sake of the current diaspora, and also making assistance connecting them to the communities inside Afghanistan. This means that the majority of the Afghan diaspora outside the country, particularly in the European countries and the Northern America, they were somehow disconnected with the Afghan communities inside Afghanistan. And the chaos of post-15 August showed that there is a need for them to get engaged directly and make sure that they're actually in support of the communities back in Afghanistan. So I think this potential needs to be taken into consideration for the next steps and the next round. That needs to be synergized and also need to be more strengthened in the future connections to make sure that we are connecting people and the diaspora people with the people inside Afghanistan, and they are actually helping each other and they're aware. The other issue was the information sharing forums. Actually, the means of connectivity and communication was also very important for us to make sure that these connections and these updating mechanism are always there to make sure that we are connecting ourselves back to the Afghans inside Afghanistan, and also to the people who are in need of coming out of Afghanistan and helping. I'm going to stop here, but I would be more than happy to answer the other questions as well.
Yes, thank you very much. So yeah, for the gender balance, I will give the word to Zala, your own findings or perception about what came out of this report. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Beatrice, and also congratulations to Nada and the rest of the team for this very insightful report. I had speaking for KEIHAN Foundation, we were in consensus with a lot of the outcomes. We really thought the same way, that's the way we experienced it as well. I did have one thing that we noticed as an Afghan Dutch Diaspora Foundation in the Netherlands that we experienced here in our efforts that we didn't see in the reports, but I'm very much interested how the other ADOs experienced it and what Nada's views are on it, is that because obviously after the Taliban takeover in Afghanistan and our activities in Afghanistan were very limited. So we decided to put a lot of our focus and efforts inland. So that means here in the Netherlands, and see what we can do in terms of policy for the newly arrived Afghans here. Obviously, every country has their own refugee organs that deal with them, the newly evacuees, and we try to obviously work together, because obviously we are as an Afghan diaspora group, we are more insightful in terms of we understand the same culture, but we also understand what problems these people face, because we came here via the same route. What we saw actually was that we were not, or we were not sufficiently being asked to help or to work together to make policies for these people. And that's a very interesting finding, because you would expect that the Afghan diaspora, not only our foundation, but also other Afghan diaspora in the Netherlands, are more insightful and could be very useful to these people. So I'm very interested to hear from you guys. How did you experience it?
Thank you, Zala. Very good point. We also found this similar here in Denmark, but please, Kava, also if you have your first impression and comments to make.
Yes, thanks for having me. And I also want to congratulate Nada on an insightful and very good work in such a short period of time. However, as Aziz already pointed out, of course, such a report or a research in such a short time cannot cover everything. So there are certain gaps, and I think there are certain important gaps which have always also been mentioned in the the chat. So what I would focus on from now on is the political part. I have the feeling that this whole situation is it's kind of engaging us all in terms of now you, the diaspora, I don't know, maybe some small amounts of percentage of the whole Afghan population lives outside of Afghanistan, not counting the neighboring countries. We cannot do what the World Bank and UN can do, or what the donors have been doing for 20 years. So right now I have the feeling that the countries, I mean my country, my host country, or my country of origin, of residence, like Germany or even other European countries, the US, Canada, etc., Australia, they are expecting the Afghan diaspora to save the humanitarian crisis, and which is not feasible, which is not possible. So we have to focus on, I think, on the political side. And from this point of view, it would be interesting to see if we focus the next research, for instance, and take it from here and focus on more on the political side, what exactly has been or has gone wrong in the last, let's say for instance 10-20 years, and what can we change for the future? So how can we prevent another 9/11, or how can we prevent another 2021? So these are huge catastrophes for the Afghan people. It's like comparing it to other cultures or other peoples. It is a kind of a Holocaust for us to see this for 40 years happening again and again, and losing our home country. So this is, I think we need to become more political, and for this we need to have networks in the diaspora. We need to sit, we need to come together, and we need to talk about everything and put everything on the table and not be ashamed of speaking the truth. And we need to find our own identities in order to be able to speak of a nation. So I think there's, it's great to have such a research, and we can take it from here and do even more research.
Thank you, Kaveh. Actually, that leads to nicely to my next question, was about, yes, what is now what are now the priorities, and how to engage and coordinate. What is a reflection from Afghan organization on how they can continue supporting, but also, what is feasible and what should be the focus now, considering the situation has changed radically. Maybe then we do the same round. I will start again with Aziz. You're muted, Aziz.
Okay. I think there are a number of very important issues for us to focus in the future, particularly when we talk about, actually, maybe we can still, work on it. One is how we can better respond to such chaotic situation. We need to be prepared for these important issues. There should be measures between the Afghan diaspora organizations, which actually should start from coordination among them to make sure that they are somehow ready to respond properly on the issues. The second issue is a channel of communication on information sharing, particularly on what is really happening on the ground and what is needed, and what are the demands, how we can act together, how we can combine efforts together. On the issues related to the future work, particularly when Mr. Kaveh was mentioning about the status of a political failure in a general, we need to actually, as civil society, we need to focus on our important recommendations to the political arena. What are actually the important issues that we should focus, particularly in terms of the support for the vulnerable groups in Afghanistan. We have completely forgotten, and particularly in this report, the vulnerable groups were forgotten. So I think that needs to be very strongly tackled because of their vulnerabilities, because of their miseries that they are actually suffering currently inside the country, and also even outside the country. We can even see it in abroad, in the very, very highly democratic countries. It's very visible. It's very, seeable. So I personally, I can experience it in the place that I am in now. I think that's something that we should be very careful about and make sure that the measures are very strongly considered in the future. two critical points from my perspective is one, the analysis must be very deep, go very deeper in terms of the, particularly when we come to the research on these important issues. The second issue is must be very, inclusive. So we have to make sure that the inclusivity is also considered and also respected in terms of the giving a positive response in the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, Zala, please.
Yes, I definitely agree with Aziz, and also highlighting what Kava said, and that was exactly the point that I was making earlier as well. The next step, and that is definitely making more connections with the Afghan diaspora in the countries of residence, but also claiming a spot on the table for politics and policy making. We already, like I said previously, we already anticipated on it. We offered ourselves, but yet we were not recognized. So we have to push harder and demand our spot, because there is no other group that has more knowledge than the own diaspora group.
Thank you. Kava, you want to continue on that?
Exactly. I will continue exactly on that, what Zala said, and also what Aziz John said and Zala John. I think we are underestimating ourselves, and also this leads to other countries underestimating us. I think we have now the knowledge and the expertise, not only now in 2001, but we have been having it for many years now, and particularly in the last couple of months, we have realized how strong the diaspora is actually in Europe and Australia and North America, and how much they can actually achieve in such a situation, most of them without funding, without any sort of having been undergoing any sort of capacity building. So what I wish for the future is that in the diaspora communities, that we network together on an international basis even, and also the donors need to understand and need to focus on that as well. For instance, such events, they need to be Afghan-led, the network events, all the working groups. We need to establish working groups on funding, on capacity building, on advocacy. And I think it's time for us also to realize and also signal this to the others, I mean, outside of the ADO, to say that we are actually strong, we want to become stronger, and we want to become independent. I will give you a short example. The whole evacuation process, every organization and every person of Afghan origin was completely dependent on the good words or on the good deeds of a politician or of a prominent person, for instance, in Europe or somewhere else. We're actually begging people to evacuate like people at risk. So we didn't have a strong lobby. And we haven't managed to have a strong lobby, not in 40 years of living in exile, some of us even for 50 and 60 years. So it's time to rethink, and it's time for us to reshift our focus and become more political and become strong, like other diaspora groups from other countries.
Thank you. So then concretely, how this can be possible, because we could see that it was one of the challenges that also was highlighted in the research, is that the coordination and the coalitions had been a challenge. So you all agree that it is something that is strongly needed, and to be more visible and to be recognized, and having a voice and a stronger role in at the policy level, but also at the operational level. So how, because you are part of the network and the existing organization, how do you envision that? How concretely this can happen? What is needed for that to happen? Please, Aziz.
Okay. I think the discussion leads us to a very important point, that the diaspora people outside Afghanistan has not properly been integrated in the society so far. So in order to bring them properly on the top of the events, I think that's a proper integration is still required. They do not feel that they have an opportunity to become a very active citizen of the current residence areas or resident countries that they are there, to help the backbone of the their own societies from the country of origin. I think that is something that I can see it. I may be wrong, but that's what I think. The diaspora communities have not been actually integrated properly. Still, they have been considered a separate group of the society. I think that's one. The second issue is the self-initiative by the diaspora has also been very reactive, very slow. Majority of the Afghan community, the diaspora community, particularly in the Northern America, has been very low in terms of their engagement at the society. They're mainly very strongly, working on their private group, but they're not properly networked throughout the other diaspora communities and for example, in Northern America. I think that there is a need for them to be engaged properly, and that needs to be initiated by themselves, because the host countries and the countries of host cannot do that for them. I think that needs something for themselves to take over. And the third issue is I'm going back to what I said at the beginning. There is a need of information sharing between the Afghans inside Afghanistan and the diaspora community outside Afghanistan, which has not been very regular and very well, actually very well not integrated in the past activities. Thank you.
Thank you. Zala, anything you would like to add, please?
Yes, I don't really want to add something new. I just want to highlight the recommendation that was stated in the report that couldn't be more well said. It was that Afghan diaspora organizations needed to organize more events to network more and to see who's out there, who's active with what, so we know what we are doing and how we can support each other's campaigns. So that's something that I really think would be a very good development.
Thank you. Well noted. Kava, please.
Yes, I wanted to actually disagree with Aziz John in this regard. Please apologies for that. I mean, living here for 30 years in Germany, and I'm 40 years old, so I came here when I was 10. I have the feeling that a lot of the people that I meet, and Germany has the biggest diaspora community outside of Asia, is you find people, they're neither German nor Afghan. They actually still in a crisis of identity, like many young people at least. And with regards to engagement, I think we have to learn from the mistakes, and particularly from the recent mistakes in the last couple of years. I think there was a huge willingness and for diaspora to get engaged. For one, the missing part was we didn't have advocacy groups or networks that actually agreed on certain things that were actually strong enough in order to position themselves. So it was symbolically organized by our countries in Europe and the US and everywhere else, in order to send a group of diaspora to the Doha talks or somewhere else, in order to support the government. But actually, the diaspora was neither, many people that I know, they were neither pro the Ghani government nor anti-Ghani government. They had actually their own agenda, but they were not being taken seriously. So I think it's time for us to reconsider and believe in ourselves, that and also express this and show this to the others. The Afghan diaspora is not Mr. Ghani, is not Mr. Khalilzad. So the Afghan diaspora is very heterogenic, and they need to find their voice. They need to find themselves. And for this, I think we need to gather, we need to discuss, and we need to have a lot of events where we need to actually talk to each other.
Thank you. So my last question for you now, then it's also then what kind of, what support NGOs such as Danish Refugee Council or an initiative like DEMAC, which is a platform for making diaspora visible and to coordinate with the system. How such organization can potentially provide any support for Afghan diaspora organization, civil society organization? What do you see the role or the connection, the potential collaboration, or anything that you think would be good to have such as support?
Well, I think the first thing that I would strongly recommend is creating a platform of coordination and synergy between the different actors, particularly with the ADOs. I think that needs to make sure that we are talking in the same page. We are all in the same page. We are talking on common issues and common grounds, and we are coming and working together. The second issue is as it was recommended also in the report, is about the funding, the core funding in particular, that they requires that one. And then a strategy is also required among them. I think the issue is that once you have a platform, then once you have the resources, then a strategy is also needed to make sure that you are coming into common ground of work and future collaboration together.
Thank you. Please, Salah.
Yeah, well, that point of Aziz I actually have some trouble with, because I do agree with it, and I stated previously as well that we need to network and we need to know about each other. But speaking from experience, we have tried multiple times in the past to even network together the smaller ADOs in the Netherlands together, which isn't that of an ambitious step, just local, but that even turned out to be a complete disaster. We couldn't even complete one Zoom meeting. I mean, the very good thing about the Afghan culture is that Afghans are very passionate. Also, their downfall is they're very passionate. So you can't even, that's something that I see for in the future. We are a bit not hesitant, but we are very, I mean, like I said, from experience, it didn't work. So I'm a bit how I and obviously the foundation I represent, we are very willing and open to receive ideas. How can you make sure that in the future you can actually make a platform and a collaboration?
Thank you. And the last word for Kava.
Yes, I would also highlight the issue of capacity building and funding of organizations. I think that it is important for stronger Afghan organizations to receive the attention, and also I think the respect for their work. From the one hand, they will receive grants anyways on a national level, even on a European level, but for the smaller organizations and initiatives, I think it's important for the foundations when they are releasing grants, that in order to help the Afghan communities long term, in order to do capacity building, they should include Afghan initiatives or Afghan communities within, let's say, grants proposal. I would give you a short example. If you, for example, if you want to work on the Balkans, or if you want to work in Greece for Afghan refugees, and big organizations such as Red Cross or whatever they're called, they're applying for these grants. It has to be connected with, okay, at least one Afghan organization is your partner, so that they can learn, with accounting, so that they can learn fundraising and so on and so forth. So helping Afghans within the European borders or outside of European borders, it has to be connected together with Afghan civil society organizations outside of Afghanistan or inside of Afghanistan. So, and the last point that I would like to make, sorry for that, is that I would like to see a sort of a reset button. So that I think in many regards we have a lot of strategic partners and very good people working with us on many issues, But on the other hand, there's also a lot of the points that we were talking about corruption and so on and so forth. So it's still going on, and it's still going on today. So we have to be very, very, very careful with that. And that's why I was saying that maybe we should take some more time, 1 or 2 months longer, for releasing certain grants, and then and press a reset button and give an equal opportunity to everyone.
Thank you all. Very insightful comments, and yeah, it was really interesting to hear from you and your perspective, from your experience. And we are taking that with us with DEMAC to actually try to see how we can further support diaspora engagement, especially for humanitarian response. But I'm sure my colleagues as well from all the attendees are taking also a lot of insights from you for future collaboration and support. So thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your insights. I will now pass the mic to my colleague Alexandra. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Bea, and thank you also from my side very much to all of you. Indeed, as Bea said, very insightful, and I think we all took carefully note of the things mentioned and said today. So I have nothing else to do than closing the event. A big thank you to, first of all the participants who joined us today on the release and of the research and the panel discussion. Thank you very much for joining. Also a big thank you obviously to the panelists Aziz, Kava and Salah. Very nice to hear your insights, and I'm pretty sure we'll be in touch further. And Neda, again, a big thanks also for presenting the research findings, and obviously the whole DEMAC team behind the scenes fixing technical troubles. You can find the report and the executive summary in the different languages on our website, and we'll share the link in the chat, so you also have direct access there. And very much looking forward to hearing from all of you